Knock on wood, but it looks like Chevrolet is finally looking like their old selves. How's it going, you guys? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. Got a couple things we're going to talk about in today's episode. We're going to talk more about Kansas. We're going to focus on Chevrolet. Going to run some stats by you guys. We got a lot to talk about, so let's get to it. Before we get too far into it, though, I want to give a big shout out to Ridge Wallet. They re-upped their sponsorship. Thank you so much to Ridge. I guess they saw a tremendous outpouring of support from the Groovy Gang, so great job, you guys. So big shout out to all you guys watching, and of course a shout out to Ridge Wallet. They make these awesome wallets right here, unlike any other wallet on the market. Durable. Been using this thing for a few weeks now, so remember, you can go to ridgewallet.com/groovy to get 10% off your order. That's ridgewallet.com/groovy. Go check them out. Thank you so much for supporting the show, everybody, and thank you to Ridge Wallet for re-upping their sponsorship and continuing to fund Out of the Groove. Really appreciate that. We know it's a racing show. I know I'm not a race team, but it is a racing show, and race fans know better than anybody else that it takes funding to make things happen. So thank you to Ridge Wallet. So now let's talk a little bit more about Kansas, Saturday night's race. I got some stats to show. We'll start with TV ratings because those came out just a little while earlier this afternoon. Adam Stern from Sports Business Daily reports that FS1 saw a 1.17 TV rating for the Kansas Cup race. That's off slightly from 1.23 a year ago, so small dip, but not a major dip. They don't have any estimations out yet as far as like actual number of viewers. That roughly means probably a little more than 2 million viewers, in the couple millions. So not a whole lot to take away there. Saturday night races on FS1 often have less viewers than a typical Sunday afternoon race, especially a Sunday afternoon race on Fox. Main broadcast networks always bring in higher ratings, but not horrible, slightly off from last year. I think most people agree the race this year was more entertaining than last year's race, so hopefully that carries over into some of the other mile-and-a-half races this season. Now, as far as the racing itself Saturday night, I want to throw this chart up from Apex Off on Twitter. We've mentioned them a couple times this season because they've been doing a very interesting deal each week, especially with this new aero package. They've been running, passing statistics and, how many passes, how many quality passes each race has, and they've been comparing this year's races to some of the last several years' races at that same track. Kansas this weekend, which, with this new aero package, it almost looked like a plate race at certain points. This race broke some records here. As you can see on this chart, we had 3,448 green flag passes. That's more than twice as many passes we had in this race a year ago. And you can see here, it's second most ever. Jimmy Johnson's win back in 2015 apparently had slightly more. But this race had more quality passes, so this was a pretty intense race. As far as passing, as far as movement throughout the field is concerned, I think that's been one thing a lot of fans are looking at with this package. How can guys pass? And I think most fans want passing to be possible, not necessarily easy, but they want it to be possible. And Kansas, definitely with this package, there was a lot of passing. A high number of passes doesn't always mean it's a good race, but I do think there is some sort of correlation there. So as you can see from that little bit of data, this weekend's race at Kansas had a lot of passing, a lot of movement. I got one more thing I want to mention before I get to the main topic of this episode, which is talking about Chevrolet. But going back to this last weekend's race, not the Cup race, but how about Friday night's Truck Series race that was won by Ross Chastain driving for Nice Motorsports. Quick reminder about who Ross Chastain is. He spent many years driving truck Xfinity Cup Series races in poor equipment, not good equipment. Mostly been a backmarker, but last year in the Xfinity Series, he raised some eyebrows by running well for JD Motorsports in the Xfinity Series in certain number of races, and that actually caught the attention of Chip Ganassi, who put Ross Chastain in the number 42 Xfinity car last year, where he actually won a race. So Chastain performed great in his couple of opportunities in good equipment last year, and that actually led to him getting a full-time Xfinity ride with Ganassi for this year. But then, of course, we remember the sad story. Sponsor DC Solar, who was supposed to sponsor that ride, ultimately went bankrupt. So unfortunately, Chastain was out of a ride, and actually Ganassi had to close their Xfinity team. So as a result, he's run basically full-time Cup, full-time Xfinity, and full-time Truck Series this year at NASCAR. He's running like 3 races a weekend every weekend. Man's busier than anyone else in NASCAR right now. And he's been forced to grind in these series in kind of not that good of equipment. I mean, that truck he won Friday night in is not a winning truck. That's a mid-pack Truck Series truck, and he took that thing to victory lane on a mile and a half. He did it in dramatic fashion. He was running second with, I think, 2 laps to go when leader Stuart Friesen ran out of gas. But hey, played the strategy right and had a great car, great truck, ran the top 5 all night long. He earned that victory, and that was huge. That was Chastain's first Truck Series win, and the fact that he was able to do it in some of this underfunded equipment he's been driving all these years, It was a great story, a great moment. Hard not to be a Ross Chastain fan, honestly. It's hard to not like the guy. Now in NASCAR, you can only qualify for points in one of their top 3 series, and actually Chastain chose to run for points in Xfinity, so that truck win isn't going to get him into the playoffs or anything, but it is still a great add to his resume and a great moment for him and his, I guess, sponsors. I didn't know this, but I looked up his stats. He's run all 7 truck races this year, again, in not that great of equipment, and he's finished in the top 10 in all 7 races, and now he's got a win. So Ross Chastain's been performing this year. Possibly the most interesting thing I noticed from his win Friday night is that he still has the attention of some top NASCAR owners. Chip Ganassi tweeted this out shortly after his win. Chip Ganassi still congratulating Ross Chastain. You see that little hashtag, I like winners. Sounds to me like Chip Ganassi still has his eyes on Ross Chastain. Obviously, it didn't work out because of sponsorship issues this year, but it sounds to me like Chastain still maybe has the potential to run with the big boys at Ganassi someday in the future. There's been speculation because Kurt Busch is only on a 1-year deal, possibly next year, 2020, they could put Ross Chastain in that car. I don't know, that's still pretty far out there. I don't know if that's happening yet, but I think Chastain would need to bring some sort of outside sponsorship. If Kurt Busch still has backing from Monster Energy, good chance he'll stay in that ride for at least 1 more year. But Chastain's still on the radar of a lot of these big teams, and I think that's great. It's great to see a guy really earning his place in NASCAR's top level. He's having to do it the hard way, the long way, but he's making it work, and he's earning a lot of fans along the way. So that was really fun to see. Now I want to talk about the Cup Series. I want to talk about Chevrolet, because one thing I've talked about many times in the last year is how Chevrolet has not looked like themselves. A lot of people call me a Chevy hater, a Hendrick hater. I'm not a hater, guys. I just tell it like I see it, and what I've seen for almost 2 years now is mediocre performance from the Chevys. I'm not making up their mediocre performance. They've been mediocre. But ever since the off weekend, 4 weeks ago for Easter, the last 3 races now, Chevrolet is looking pretty darn good. And I'm not just saying like good by 2018 or 2017 Hendrick standards or Chevy standards. No, they're looking great. They're looking as good as they've ever looked. Chevy looks back. And, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but 3 races in a row, 3 very different tracks, they've run great. Now, before I talk more about how good they've been running these last few weeks, I want to remind you guys just how bad things had been for the last couple of years. Still to this day, Chevrolet makes up the most cars in the NASCAR Cup Series field. Of the 40 or so guys that qualify each week, most of them are Chevrolets. 2 years ago, 2017, Chevy had 10 wins as a manufacturer. Johnson had 3 of them. Kyle Larson had 4. Casey Kane had 1. Dillon had 1. Ryan Newman even had a win. So 2017, not really an off year for Chevy. Still 10 wins out of 36 races. Less than third, so a little rough, but not a bad year for them. But in 2018, things got bad. 2018, Chevy had 4 wins total as a manufacturer. 36 races, 4 wins, and 3 of them were by Chase Elliott, and the other one was Austin Dillon at Daytona. So including this year, if we look back at the last 84 points-paying Cup races, basically from the start of 2017 to the modern day, to the present day, 84 races, Chevy has 15 wins. Compare that to Toyota, who has 36, I did the math, and Ford, who has 33. Chevy has less than half of those manufacturers. So needless to say, since basically the second half of 2017, Chevrolet has really noticeably not been as good as Ford or Toyota. And it's been frustrating, I'm sure, for a lot of their fans. Hendrick Motorsport's one of the most popular teams in the sport. Historically, I'm sure it's been very frustrating, and the last 2 years have not been good to them. But now I'll talk about 2019 because things have turned around for Hendrick and for Chevrolet as a manufacturer. Now I did some more math. If we look at the first 9 races this year, Chevrolet as a manufacturer had a combined 21 top 10s. In 9 races, only 21 top 10s. And remember, that's factoring in RCR drivers, Ganassi drivers, Hendrick drivers, every Chevy team out there. So in other words, for the first 9 races this year, Chevrolet as a manufacturer only was averaging about 2.3 drivers finishing in the top 10 in each race. It's not very good, but in these last 3 races, in just 3 races, Chevy as a manufacturer now has a combined 17 top 10s. They've almost matched their first 9 races total of top 10s in only 3 races. So in other words, these last 3 races now, Chevy is averaging 5.6 drivers in the top 10 per race. So it looks to me like they're running more than twice as good as they were at the start of the season, which if we look at the stat sheet, if we look at where people are performing, we look at how people have vaulted through the point standings, it's about how it looks. A lot has been made about Alex Bowman, now with 3 straight second place finishes. He's vaulted himself from 21st in points just 4 weeks ago. He's now 12th in points. That's plus 9 in just 3 races. Chase Elliott got that win at Talladega, his first win of the year, and still Chevy's only win of the season, but now he's 4th in points with that win, locking himself into the playoffs. playoffs. Kurt Busch, who was kind of Chevy's only bright spot those first few races, has stayed strong. I thought that team might fade a little bit because remember, that one car didn't even make the playoffs last year, but nope, he's still hanging strong. He's 8th in points still. And his teammate, Kyle Larson, who sucked for the first 2 months of this season, he's figured things out a little bit. The last 2 races, he's had 2 straight top 10s. He's back inside the top 16 in points. Jimmie Johnson even, who for a brief period just a couple weeks ago was outside the top 16 in points, he snuck back in and is right there 16th on that edge, but it's still in the playoffs. This season has been dominated by Joe Gibbs Racing and Team Penske. They've won like most of the races. How many? I think they're the only 2 teams besides Hendrick to have wins this year. That's how dominant they've been. But with Hendrick getting that win at Talladega, with them running really well at Dover, with a couple of cars right there in the top 5, and again at Kansas, a couple of drivers finishing in the top 5, Chevy is back. I'm here to say it. I know I said a few weeks or a few months ago that Chevy was, and Hendrick Motorsports especially, was starting to look like Roush Fenway. They've managed to turn things around. They've managed to avoid completely falling off that cliff the way Roush did. And I said it then, it was very possible, but they needed to make something happen soon. And sure enough, they sprang to life after that off weekend, and they look great. Back in January or early February, whenever I did it, I predicted Chase Elliott would win the championship this year because of the way he's progressed steadily throughout his first 3 years. I thought this year he'd win 3 or 4 more races and contend for the championship. He was my pick. And finally, after 9 troubling weeks, he's starting to look like the championship contender I think he can be this year. There's a lot of moving parts at Hendrick Motorsports right now, but at least finally, for the first time in a few months, I think we can say that the future looks somewhat bright. A lot of people were excited about Chase Elliott, excited about William Byron, excited about Alex Bowman, and then this year especially, they all struggled out the gates, and I think people were worried. I was worried. But now, finally, I'm really relieved in a lot of ways. They're looking like the contenders we know they can be. Alex Bowman impressed the heck out of me last year, and then he came out this year and sucked. I didn't know what was going on, but he's finally 3 straight second place finishes. He's looking good. Chase Elliott with a win at Talladega. He's looking good. Even William Byron had top 10 at Dover. He started to qualify better on a weekly basis. He's looking good. Jimmie Johnson finished in the top 10 at Kansas. He's looking still not that good, but better. I'm excited. If I was a Hendrick Motorsports fan, I'd be really excited right now. And I know I'm talking a lot about Hendrick Motorsports, but I think Chip Ganassi Racing has a lot to be excited about as well. Kurt Busch has obviously run really well all season long. He's overperformed all of our expectations so far. But Kyle Larson, who was just rough to start this year, is finally starting to turn things around. We went to a track he likes at Dover. He finished 3rd. Go to a track he likes here at Kansas. Gets another top 10. He's starting to look better. He's back in the playoff hunt. I think things can only get better for Ganassi going forward. RCR as well. Austin Dillon still run pretty solid this year. And we saw Tyler Reddick in just his 2nd career start finish in the top 10 at Kansas. Chevrolet, as a manufacturer, they figured it out. Don't know what. Don't know how. But they figured it out, and I think it really was because of whatever they did in that off weekend a few weeks back, whatever switch they flipped, whatever strategy they decided to whip out for the rest of the season. That was a good decision. Anyway, you guys, that's really all I have to talk about in this show. Be curious to know what you guys think, or do you guys think Chevy's back? Do you think I'm getting ahead of myself? Do you think Chevy could still struggle this year? Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. But anyway, you guys, that's all I have for my show. Thank you so much for watching as always. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Those links are down in the description. I also have t-shirts available down there if you want to support me, support the show. You can also send me some cool stuff to my P.O. box. I made a video earlier this week, actually. You have until May 25th to send me stuff if you want me to open it up and show it off in a video. I'm going to be moving, so I got to close that P.O. box, so you have until May 25th to send stuff. Kind of a last chance call here, but thanks for doing that, and of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Shout out Michael Harrison, at Jesus of the Stars, SelfishGifts.com, Mentally Defective, Cameron James, John Koblenz, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, Ross Corlett, TheRacingInsiders.com, and the rest of these amazing Patreon supporters. You guys are the ones who are able to support me and allow me to keep doing what I'm doing over here, and I really appreciate it. If you also want to be a supporter like these fine folks over here, you can check out that top link down in the description. I greatly appreciate it. As of the recording of this video, I have just one more assignment to turn in, so my summer vacation is almost starting, which means there's going to be a lot more videos and a lot more content coming your way on this channel, so I'm really excited for that. Hope you guys are too. Thanks everyone for watching. See you guys again later this week. Have a good one, y'all.